Hi, I'm Kevin Keller, the pragmatic statistician. In this episode of Street Stats, we're going to talk about how to teach the concepts of designed experiments, or DOE, to anyone in less than 10 minutes. I saw this presentation over 35 years ago at a conference, and it was brilliant. I've used it ever since, and it covers some hard concepts well that will resonate with anyone you want to have involved in design experiments. So here we go. I'm going to get my stopwatch ready. Ready, set, go. Now, back a century ago, my grandfather was a county agent. Now, he was not inept like Mr. Kimball in Green Acres, but he would go from farm to farm talking to farmers about rotating crops, irrigation, maintaining soil quality, and so on. Now, one year, a new corn seed was invented that was promising an additional 10% yield increase at the end of harvest season. My granddad was convinced it was a great deal for the farmers and went from farm to farm convincing farmers to invest in it for the upcoming planting season. Except for Farmer Joe. Farmer Joe said, Cece, you've never lied to me before, but if you're wrong, then I could literally lose the farm. My granddad then said, okay, Joe, let's do this. Let's plant half of the farm with the old corn seed and half of the farm with the new corn seed. At harvest time, we'll keep the trucks separated and see how it turns out. So, on one half of the farm, we have the old seed, and on the other half of the farm, we have the new seed. And sure enough, at harvest time, Farmer Joe keeps one truck separated from the other, and the new corn seed delivers 11.9% increased yield. So, what should Farmer Joe do next year? So, half of the people in my class will say plant the entire farm with the new corn seed. But half of the class has grown suspicious of me, and now they'll say reverse it for next year. But I have failed to tell you part of the story. Along this part of the farm runs a river. Now, what conclusions can you draw? The class goes, you don't know. It could be the corn seed, it could be the river. This, my friends, is called confounding, not confusing, confounding. Confounding is something everyone must be alert for. The world is full of confounding. When your results are confounded, they are confounded forever. You cannot tell, and there's no way to separate them. A former colleague of mine, Ray Littlejohn, calls this effect tears and tissues. When you tell the experimenter all of their work is confounded and can't be saved, they start crying. And then you hand them a box of Kleenex. No magic can be done. Tears and tissues. But we're smarter than that, my friends. Can we get rid of the river? Of course not. So we have to build the river into the experiment. Now, if we go back and redesign this experiment, how would we incorporate the river into the experiment? And of course, you're sitting there going, well, we could divide it vertically as opposed to horizontally. And now we have the new seed versus the old seed. And any air that the river might create is distributed on both sides of the fields. Now, if there's nothing else going on with the farm, then we can fairly compare old seed versus new seed. Now, the curious amongst us, and that's just about everybody on this who's listening to this, might say, I wonder if increased or decreased moisture has any impact. So now we want to add a new variable into the mix. We now have two variables, seed, old versus new, and moisture, lots versus very little, or river, near versus far. We could do that, right? And so if we do that, if we want to look at the interaction, we could plot it into force. and have the old seed separated in quadrants, the new seed separated in quadrants, and we can now measure the interaction. Easy peasy. So maybe the old seed likes more moisture, but the new seed doesn't care. Maybe the new seed really loves moisture. Maybe it's too much. We can test for it. Now, Farmer Joe screams, "No!" Because the farmer now has to do a lot of work to take his tractor and go very carefully in that smaller space. Farmer just wants to get on one end of the land and go to the other. And that makes it easy. It's inefficient for the farmer to collect that information. The farmer doesn't care about the interaction. The farmer just wants to know new seed versus old seed. This is exactly the same situation as your plant manager or general manager screaming about the resources that it's going to take to keep everything straight. Experiments are very hard to manage, and the likelihood that it could all go wrong is quite real. Keep it simple. Time. We are at 5 minutes. Hope you can see that. 5 minutes, 41 seconds. In 5 minutes and 41 seconds, I just taught you about developing a research question. Do we get increased yield? The output variable, yield, main effects, seed, moisture, interactions. Does the seed like increase, decrease moisture? Confounding, the river affecting the results. And now that we understand we can't get rid of the river, we can design that source of variation into the experiment. And finally, trade-offs for the information versus the resources it takes to get that information. And we did that in 5 minutes and 41 seconds. Pretty cool. So feel free to use this example. Been doing it for over 35 years. So be careful out there. The streets are messy, and so is data. But remember, there is always a way.